Okay, here's a little better test. Alright, this is my book. It's called Matriarch of the Witch Clan. I'm the author of this book. My picture on the back there. Oops. Right there. My name is John Storm, and I'm testing YouTube capabilities for this webcam. I'm not sure I like this. Might want to try to see if I can get my camcorder up and running again, because I'm noticing that my voice is not necessarily in sync with my lips. Much of this video isn't in sync with much of anything. I can't imagine why it comes out that way and why somebody sells this as such. I'm trying a longer video than the usual 20-30 second little vids that I've been testing. I want to go for a few minutes and see where this thing hangs up. On YouTube, I believe I have the option for going 10 minutes. I can't think of what I'd do for 10 minutes. Let me get my glasses out here. This vid is definitely not going on YouTube, but I'll read a few things here. Actually, let me pop open a page here. The Haunted Woods, The Itch. There we go. I like this one. This tells you a little something about practical witchery, or that Leona helped sort out the day's pickings from Emma's sack in the summer kitchen. First, everything was washed under cool running water with a scrub brush to get off any residual dirt in the big deep sink, and then sorted to dry into separate baskets and hooks from the low ceiling. As her grandmother instructed, and there's a little word from our email program here. As her grandmother instructed, she took items already dry from occupied hooks and baskets and transferred them to glass top jars and canisters and ended up in Emma's windowed pantry shelves along the west wall of the summer kitchen. It was about time to begin preparing for dinner, so Emma brought out some potatoes and some of the sulfur shells to the kitchen with her. Leona helped by peeling potatoes while she watched her grandmother cut the fungus shells into small pieces and drop them into a saucepan of boiling water with a little crushed garlic, a bouillon cube, and some cornstarch to make a thick gravy. Acorn flour was used to make biscuits and added to the meatloaf, heavily mixed with mushrooms, bell peppers, onions, eggs, and herbs from the garden. Leona made notes on how many wild ingredients were used in the meal into her book of shadows. "You really do use the woods like a grocery store," she remarked. "In the old days, if folks suspected you of being a witch," Emma explained, "they wouldn't sell you groceries because they feared that God or the church would hate them for helping a devil worshiper." "That's silly," she said. "We've got no devils in our religion, and if we did, who would be crazy enough to worship one?" "Well, chances are that no one would let you live long enough to explain that little fact to them." Emma drained the hot water from the potatoes and pulled a large bowl from the cupboard to mash them in. "They would only believe you were lying to deceive them and steal their righteous souls anyway. So the first step would be to try and starve you out of their community." "I get it," she supplied. "So we'd go out and get our food from the woods so we wouldn't starve, right?" "That's right," Emma said. "But that wouldn't be the end of it. When everyone was poor and hungry and we failed to starve to death, it was assumed that we were using our dark arts to conjure our food and stealing away fat little babies to eat." "That's awful," she said, shocked. "That's like that Hansel and Gretel story where the witch puts them in the oven." "Exactly," her grandmother said, adding milk and a lump of butter to the potatoes as she mashed them. "The early church, after it got a foothold in the land, spread all kinds of evil stories about us so that people would obey them and not return to the old ways. Where once having a witch around to counsel the king and deliver the babies and heal the sick was a good thing, now everything that happened that was bad was because God was angry at the witch in their midst. So many of us were forced to go into hiding, and we hid in the wilderness where superstitious people feared to go, or we hid in the cities and never let on who or what we were. So that's why we're not permitted to talk about this stuff to outsiders," she surmised aloud. "And it's also why you're learning herbs, medicines, and wild foods as part of your craft," the older woman added. "Because if and when it should ever happen again, you will not starve or get sick because no one will care for you. Danu takes care of her own." The Danu of the Tuatha De Dananns, Leona brightened. It means the people of Danu in the old language, she said. There's even a river named after her in Europe. Would that be the Blue Danube, she asked, like in the waltz? One and the same. Emma covered the mashed potatoes and grabbed her pot holders for the meatball. Before our ancestors fled the Romans to the British Isles, we lived throughout most of Central Europe. In some places, the old ways are still practiced today by people the Roman Empire never got around to completely ruling. So there are more of us than just us? Leona asked. And where once we shared our wisdom with the kings of the earth, Emma said, covering the meatloaf, we survive now by keeping our secrets to ourselves. That's sad, she said. I learned in school how some people are starving in some places of the world. We could help them better than the Christians. Even so, her grandmother said, that would depend upon how much their land is blighted. Sometimes even the wild food and medicine is affected in a drought. Willard came into the kitchen carrying a brown paper sack like a prize. Known for his sweet tooth, he often brought home a treat for after dinner. Save a little room, he said cheerfully. I brought some ice cream for dessert. He opened the fridge and pushed a quart container into the icebox. We can all have homemade root beer floats, Emma said. With Johnny's help, Leona set the table for dinner. They spread out the tablecloth and set the bowls heaped with mashed potatoes and acorn biscuits besides the vegetable and mushroom-laced meatloaf and the sulfur-shaped shelf gravy on top of it. The place settings were added, and Willard said a brief word of thanks, then everybody dug in. This tastes like white meat chicken, Leona remarked, a piece of sulfur shelf dangling from her fork and popping it into her mouth. Not surprising, said Willard. My brothers and I used to call that stuff chicken of the woods, when my mom used to send us out to find it. Your mom was a witch? She asked wide-eyed. Not likely, Willard shook his head. My folks were good Christian folk, and we were very poor. Back during the Great Depression, there wasn't a lot of money and few jobs. When you could get enough for a little bit of meat on your table, you stretched it as far as you could, like this meatloaf here. My mom used to stretch hers with a lot of bread, but your grandma uses acorns with vegetables and mushrooms. You almost don't know she didn't use much meat at all. I like it like this, she said. It's yummy, Johnny agreed. Being poor never tasted so good, Willard laughed gruffly. We're poor, Johnny asked. No, silly, Leona chided affectionately. If you were poor, you wouldn't have all this neat stuff and a nice house and a TV and all. Oh, said Johnny, still looking like he didn't understand. With dinner finished and the dishes washed and put away, Johnny took the garbage out to the shed. Her grandmother and Willard pulled out a glass-gallon jug of sassafras brew from the fridge and shook it up until it made a fine pinkish froth on top. Leona brought over the soda mugs and helped pour each of them a tall mug of the brew. It was further sweetened with a scoop of the vanilla ice cream that Willard brought home, and they retired to the living room to watch the honeymooners together on the television. Johnny insisted she help him spoon a little of his into a shallow china bowl and setting it out in the garden before relaxing with the family. An extraordinary amount of fireflies lit up the backyard. All in all, it was the end of a perfect summer day. That's one of the chapters from my book. A good example of practical witchery in a family setting circa the late 1950s. I need to see how far I can go with these videos, how long this is on, I don't know. We got a little red thing flashing.